Hi, and welcome to the Celebrating Men podcast, sponsored by the International Council for Men and Boys. I am your host, Larry DeMarco, and today we have a special guest, David Maywald. He's an advocate for men and boys, the author of The Relentless War on Masculinity, and the founder of Celebrating Masculinity. David, thank you for being a guest.
An absolute pleasure to be here with you, Larry.
David, why are you passionate about this issue, supporting men and the attack on masculinity?
I've been a passionate advocate for boys' education for 30 years, and I've been publicly backing men's health, education for young men and boys, and the broader issues around male well-being for 15 years. As a father, as a proud Australian man, I think it's the right thing to do.
Please share with us a little bit about yourself, the man behind the book.
So I am a proud father to a son and a daughter, and having them and sharing how they're developing has been a key part of my life. It brings a lot of joy, and it brings a stake in the future in wanting to create a better world for what they will come out into. And I passionately believe in the importance of collaboration between men and women. And we've just been going in the wrong direction with polarization and with the attacks on boys and men. And it's really undermined relationships. It's undermined the health of our society. And as responsible adults, we've got to make a better world for our children.
Tell us about some of the boards that you're on and your platform, Celebrating Masculinity.
So for over 25 years, I've had almost 20 different board roles. So that involves being a board member or director of organisations. Most of them have been non-profits, and most recently they're in the delivery of frontline community services in the suburbs around me in the city that I live in here, Canberra, which is the national capital of Australia. And I find that really rewarding to be working together with other like-minded people who are working for positive change in our community. And that's brought a perspective on vision and strategy and creating the change that we need that I'm trying to apply to the advocacy for boys and men as well. Looking forward, having hopeful, aspirational messaging and building this ever-expanding coalition of supporters for boys and men.
David, I want to go straight into a lightning round, if it's okay with you. Why do you call it a war on masculinity?
I'm not the first, and I won't be the last. So Christina Hop-Summers in 2000, the War Against Boys, Suzanne Benker, The War on Men in 2013, and Toxic War on Masculinity in 2023. That word, it captures how broad and systemic and extensive the attacks have been against men and boys for decades.
What's one thing people get completely wrong about masculinity today?
Masculinity is hugely misunderstood, and it's not just been caricatured, but it's been abused by people and organisations who want to undermine good, hardworking, decent men and fathers. Our opponents have built these straw men, these fake caricatures of masculinity for the purpose of destroying them, to try and undermine the roles that fathers and men play in our society that are crucial for our children, for our wives, for our communities. Men need to step up and retake ownership of what masculinity means. It's a complex thing. It's not a programmed, written set of instructions. Masculinity is about modulating behaviour. It's how you demonstrate strength and compassion, how you're a responsible, empathetic leader. And it can only be formed and forged through the surrounding of elder-loving men.
What's the real cost of fatherlessness that no one talks about?
Fatherlessness has a major epidemic in our societies. It's prevalent and hidden, and it's not measured, but it increases poverty, cuts education performance, worsens crime and drug abuse. It leads to terrible physical and mental health problems that can affect people for the rest of their lives. And we have to face up to the importance of both biological mothers and biological fathers for the life outcomes of their children.
Are boys being punished just for being boys?
Yes. Yes, they are. It's morally wrong to do. Would never do it to girls. Our gynocentric societies don't accept boys for being male, for innately expressing the testosterone and the physiology they are naturally born with. I love that you first spoke with Tom Golden on Celebrating Men, and he has a deep understanding of the innate, inherent differences between males and females. We need to honour men, women, boys, and girls. We're all important. We're all part of the future.
Why do you think feminism hasn't stopped at equality?
Power is addictive. Ever increasing power is addictive. The movement for female empowerment, the multiple waves of feminism, they were incredibly successful. They resulted in phenomenal social changes, cultural formation, institutional capture. Unfortunately, some of the worst aspects of feminism resulted in vindictiveness and overreach and completely flawed arguments. What I've seen is the weaponization of our inherent protective bias towards females. We cherish women. We cherish girls. They're crucially important for society. But what feminists did was to turn that inherent bias into a weapon against men and boys. It's completely morally bankrupt, and we have to call it out at every instance.
What's the single most damaging message that boys hear growing up today?
Masculinity is toxic. That you're bad because you're a boy. That you'll grow up to harm people in your community.
Why is toxic masculinity such a harmful label?
It's received as a blanket generic denigration of half of the population. And that would never be allowed for a criticism of girls and women. We have to call out the double standards. The mental exercise I always use is, would this be acceptable treatment for girls in the classroom? Would this be acceptable to expose women to in the workplace? The double standards have got worse and worse in the recent decades, and we have to have a symmetry in terms of our moral response. We can't continue to have male disposability at the same time as all men are denigrated as being toxic. It's time to stand proudly and speak up and take constructive action.
What are the four horsemen of modern feminism, and how do they show up in everyday life?
One of the most commented on sections of my book, The Relentless War on Masculinity, is chapter 3. It's the middle chapter of 5, and it's called The Four Horsewomen of Modern Feminism. I've specifically personified those. I've given them life, given them this human character. The four horsewomen are misandry, gamma bias, gynocentrism, and gaslighting. The reason I highlighted these four is because they've become so prevalent, so overused. Misandry is the open hatred and contempt of men, which is accepted in society and often is not questioned. Whereas any potential skerrick of misogyny is relentlessly called out including in the media. Gamma bias was described 7 years ago by Martin Seeger and John Barry. It is the amplification of traits and the diminution of traits depending on the biological sex of the protagonist. We might say that a woman working hard is hugely creditable and benefiting her family, whereas a man working exactly the same hours is somehow not looking after his family and spending too much time at work. It's choosing your response based on the sex of the protagonist. And that's how we can work out if someone is biased. If they can't work out what their response is until they know the sex of the victim, then we know that they are biased. It also gives us a framing for measuring and identifying where this bias is. It's a double standard between males and females. It's a little bit subtle, but you can tell it by the difference in people's reaction to the sex of the protagonist. Gynocentrism is a system-level cultural social bias towards girls and women. It's uplifting the interest and preferences and traits of females above those of males. Tom Golden mentions that as a moral weight, it gives females more moral importance in society than the moral importance of males. In gaslighting, many people are aware of gaslighting, but they might not have thought about how it's been used against men and boys for decades. It's a psychological manipulation that can make people doubt their own experience. You often see this when men speak up about the gender pay gap. Suddenly they're sexist, when all they've done is make a factual observation, and it undermines the worthy advocacy of men and boys across all of the disparities, the 12 key areas that the International Council for Men and Boys have identified.
You say society is now gynocentric. What does that actually look like?
Gynocentrism is a preference for the traits, interests, and strengths of females over males, including giving more moral weight to girls and women over boys and men. The English-speaking countries have become culturally gynocentric a couple of decades ago, and you can see that in the misandry in media and entertainment and in the denigration of fathers and men. And what we've moved into now is institutional gynocentrism, where female empowerment and the preferences for women have been embedded into organisations, in mission statements, in appointments, in terms of the funding.
How have male suicide rates become part of this war?
There's a tragic loss each year of 50,000 men and boys to suicide in the 5 countries of the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And that is equivalent to some of the biggest wars in the history of humanity. If we could reduce the male to female suicide ratio in the Anglo countries down to about the global average, we could possibly save 23,000 men and boys each year. And that's something that is worth moving heaven and earth to achieve.
Why are so many men opting out of marriage and fatherhood?
Fatherhood is inherent to what it means to be a man, to masculinity and to positive manhood. And it's tragic that so many young men and boys no longer aspire to marriage and to becoming a father. There are many reasons for it. The denigration of fathers, the unequal treatment of men in separation. A lot of boys know about that. They've heard the stories. We've had 50 years or so of no-fault divorce, and we've seen the tragic impacts of fatherlessness and disconnection between men and boys. We have to solve this as a society. It's unhealthy. It's leading to the collapse in populations, and it's crucial for meaning for men and women and for our future society.
What do boys need that schools aren't giving them?
Boys need to be cherished and honoured at school. We've rightly cherished and honoured girls for several decades, and we've uplifted them. We've given them the curriculum, the content, the encouragement. Our boys deserve no less. Ask any parent who has a son and a daughter. They love them equally. That is not being expressed through our school system. We're proud that our schools are girl positive, and we need our schools to be boy positive as well.
What's one way modern policies actively undermine fatherhood?
The active undermining of fatherhood is most sharply expressed through the asymmetries in family law, where there's an assumption that fathers are not as important as mothers. We have mountains of social science research that shows the crucial importance of fathers, as well as the crucial importance of mothers. And for the health of our societies, we need to rectify this asymmetry. It'll be an incredibly tough battle that might take decades, and in some places, sadly, they're lagging behind, but we have to do this for the future generations of children.
How do media and advertising portray men, and why does it matter?
I've been inspired by Dan Romand of Men Need to Be Heard about the portrayal of men and boys in media. It undermines the confidence of generations of young men and boys. It has caused men and fathers to step back from their crucial roles. We know from the published research, for example, the books on misandry by Nathanson and Young in about 2000, misandry was prolific in media and entertainment in the 1990s, and it got a lot worse in the 2 decades after that. Once you become aware of what misandry and gamma bias are, you see them everywhere. And it's really sad for boys to grow up with thousands of negative depictions of males and masculinity.
What happens when masculinity is treated like a problem to be solved?
When masculinity is treated like a problem to be solved, it pathologizes the behavior of all men and boys. It says what you're doing is wrong and harmful, and it causes them to retreat and to pull away from relationships, to disengage from education, from their families, from employment. It undermines the life outcomes of generations of boys and young men.
Why is the absence of male role models such a quiet crisis?
The absence of role models takes away inspiration and growth opportunities for boys and young men. We used to have really healthy depictions of men, of fathers, of masculinity. I love a lot of the movies from the 1980s for just that reason, and I'll always treasure those. When most of the depictions are negative, then that pushes men out of the public square, and it decreases the ambition of boys and young men. And that takes away opportunities for girls and women. It reduces healthy relationships. It means that fewer couples come together and have their own children. And that means more people don't have a stake in the next generation. And they end up not really caring about where we're going.
What's a moment that made you realize this war on masculinity was real?
I realized it was real when I looked at my own behavior, and I had been brainwashed. I realized that I had anti-male opinions that weren't evidence-based, that I myself had become a blind troop in this war. When I saw that I'd fallen for it, it took a long time to face that reckoning and to be intellectually honest that the battles of the past, of 5 decades ago, are no longer relevant to the situation being faced right now.
If you could rewrite one gender policy, what would it be and why?
The big policy that would impact a lot of relationships is around domestic and family violence. It's this simplification of perpetrator and victim. What we know from decades of research in this space, a lot of that behaviour is mutual. It's not easily unpacked. It doesn't fit into neat checkboxes. A lot of it's subjective, and a lot of it is not the material that is well suited to being arbitrated in courts. These are human relationships with all their flaws. They're much better dealt with by organised religion than they are with legislation and regulation. The ability to show forgiveness and grace, they are human behaviours that are not easily written down in a law, but can be learnt through honest reflection and involvement in religious communities.
What role do women play in ending this war on masculinity?
Women have found it much easier to speak up about the disparities faced by boys and men. And it's tragic when you think about it, that a man can be shamed and labelled and named a sexist and misogynist, but we are more willing to listen to mothers and women about the issues that touch deeply into the lives of boys and men. It's shameful. I call on all men to stand up, speak, and drive towards constructive action. We must do that side by side with women of goodwill. But the most powerful role model for boys and young men is to see their fathers and other men speaking up for them. My son is just as important as my daughter, and I expect that the opportunities in education will be just as good for my son as for my daughter. The health of men is as important as the health of women. So I have some great heroes who are female advocates for men and boys. Now it's time for men to stand up and to speak and to be heard.
What gives you hope that things can change?
Things are already changing, and they're changing for the better. When I looked at 2025, I easily wrote 7,000 words on the wins and achievements for men and boys, and that was mostly focused on the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. There's an enormous amount of momentum here. We have the weight of justice and moral arguments on our side. It's cutting through. It's making a difference. We need to help each other. We need to celebrate small wins. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are working towards positive social change, and that will benefit all men, all women, children, and it'll result in a healthier society.
David, your links and information is in the description portion of this video. But for people who are driving and multitasking and can't click on that link to find out information now, please tell them verbally, where can we learn more about you and the book?
So please reach out to me, David Maywald. You can find me in different places. My book is called The Relentless War on Masculinity, and it's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Search and you'll find that from your favorite distributors. And please look up Celebrating Masculinity, which is on Substack. It's on X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And it's got a positive vision for men and boys how we can work together with girls and women and how we can achieve positive social change.
David, that's all we have time for. Let's leave it there. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the Celebrating Men podcast. We have been here with David Maywald, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. Please don't forget to like, follow, comment, subscribe, and share this with other members of your social media platforms and contact lists. Check the description portion of the video to learn more about the International Council for Men and Boys and David Maywald. Signing off. Tune in next time. Bye for now.